People assume pressure is louder in the NBA, bigger arenas, bigger contracts, bigger cameras. But the truth is, pressure doesn't come from size. It comes from how fast the spotlight expects you to become something. When I entered the WNBA, I didn't feel like a rookie. I felt like a decision, like a test, like a question the league wanted answered immediately. Not in years, not in seasons, right now. From the very first game, there was no space to slowly grow into the role, no room to disappear on the bench, no allowance for being almost ready. In the NBA, rookies are drafted into systems that already exist. Veterans carry the weight, coaches manage expectations, fans talk about potential. In the WNBA, the moment you arrive, the question isn't who will you become, it's can you carry this right now? Attendance, ratings, headlines, conversations. You don't just join the league, you become part of its momentum. That difference changes everything. Every mistake feels heavier because it doesn't belong only to you. It feels like it reflects something bigger, about the team, about the league, about whether the excitement around you is justified. When you miss a shot, it's not just a missed shot. It becomes a talking point, a clip, a debate, and suddenly you're not just learning the game at the highest level, you're learning how to exist under expectation. What shocked me wasn't the intensity. I expected that. What shocked me was the lack of patience. There's this quiet belief that WNBA rookies don't get to ease in. You're expected to be ready, to contribute, to lead, to elevate, almost immediately. Because there aren't many roster spots. There aren't many rotations. There isn't a long runway. You either fit quickly or you feel it slipping. That pressure doesn't announce itself. It doesn't scream. It sits with you. In practice, in film sessions, in interviews, where every answer feels like it carries meaning beyond the words. You become careful without realizing it, aware in moments where instinct should take over. And that's when I realized something that people outside the league rarely see. WNBA pressure isn't about fame. It's about responsibility without protection. You're expected to help grow the game while still figuring out who you are inside it, to perform like a veteran while being treated like a symbol, to prove your worth quickly, because the margin for error is smaller than anyone wants to admit. This is the part no one really warns you about. And once you understand this difference, once you really see how early the weight arrives, you start to understand why WNBA rookies carry themselves differently, why the learning curve feels steeper, why confidence and hesitation can exist in the same moment. Because in this league, pressure doesn't wait for you to catch up. Once that pressure settles in, it changes how every day feels. Practices don't feel like preparation anymore, they feel like evaluation. Every drill carries meaning. Every rep feels watched, even when no one is staring. You start understanding that in the WNBA, development doesn't happen quietly. Growth happens in public. And public growth means public mistakes. In the NBA, rookies often have the space to struggle without consequence. They can play 10 minutes one night, sit the next, learn behind veterans, and slowly find rhythm. In the WNBA, there's rarely that buffer. Rotations are tight, minutes are earned quickly and lost even faster. When you step on the floor, you're not just proving you belong, you're proving you're worth keeping there. That reality creates a different kind of tension. You're not only thinking about your performance today, you're thinking about tomorrow, about next week, about whether one bad stretch could change how you're viewed. Because in a league with fewer teams and fewer roster spots, security feels fragile. You don't get years to figure it out. Sometimes you don't even get months. And then there's the visibility. WNBA rookies don't just play games, they represent something. Growth, progress, the future of the league. That sounds inspiring, and it is. But it also means every action carries extra weight. Fans don't just watch you to see how you perform. They watch to decide what you mean. Are you living up to the hype? Are you worth the attention? Are you proof that the excitement around the league is real? That kind of scrutiny arrives early, much earlier than people realize. You feel it in interviews where questions come before you've had time to process your own experience. You feel it in conversations that start comparing you to legends before you've even settled into your role. You feel it in the way one good game raises expectations instantly and one bad game invites doubt just as fast. The hardest part isn't the criticism. Athletes expect that. The hardest part is the speed. Everything moves quickly. Opinions form quickly. Narratives stick quickly. And once they stick, they're hard to shake. You don't get the luxury of being inconsistent without explanation. You're expected to grow, adjust, and deliver all at once, this is where the pressure really separates itself. NBA rookies are often allowed to be projects. WNBA rookies are often expected to be solutions. And when you realize that, you understand why the mental load feels heavier, why confidence has to be built differently, why learning isn't just about skill, but about survival. Because in this league, development isn't something that happens slowly in the background. It happens under lights with expectations attached. And once that clicks, you stop comparing pressure by size or salary. You start comparing it by timing. That timing changes how you think about yourself. In the NBA, a rookie can afford to think long term. They can imagine who they'll be in 3 years. In the WNBA, you're often forced to think short term first. Who do I need to be right now to survive here? How quickly can I adjust? How fast can I prove I'm reliable? That constant urgency doesn't leave much room for patience, especially with yourself. I noticed it in how I approached mistakes. Before, a missed shot was information, something to learn from. Now, it felt like evidence people would use to support whatever opinion they already had. And when mistakes start feeling like proof instead of process, confidence becomes fragile. Not because you lack belief, but because belief is constantly being tested. Another thing people don't realize is how pressure follows you off the court. It doesn't stop when the game ends. It shows up in interviews where you're expected to sound composed even when you're still processing. It shows up in social media where one clip can define a week of conversation. It shows up in silence too when a good performance is treated as expected instead of earned. That's a quiet kind of pressure most people never see. NBA rookies are often shielded by the structure around them. Large staffs, deep rotations, multiple layers of protection. In the WNBA, that structure is leaner, which means the player absorbs more responsibility, more visibility, more consequence, and when the system is smaller, the individual carries more weight. You also become aware of how quickly comparison enters the picture, not just to other rookies, but to veterans, to legends, to moments from the past. You're measured against standards built over decades, often before you've had time to fully understand your own game. That kind of comparison can be motivating, but it can also be overwhelming if you don't learn how to filter it. This is where many people misunderstand WNBA pressure. They think it's about toughness, or media, or money, but the real difference is psychological. It's about being asked to stabilize something bigger than yourself before you've had the chance to stabilize your own footing. And when you carry that long enough, you start to realize something important. The pressure isn't heavier because the league is harder. It's heavier because the margin for growth is smaller. One of the biggest differences people overlook is how mistakes are absorbed by the system. In the NBA, the system absorbs the rookie. In the WNBA, the rookie often absorbs the system. When something goes wrong, there isn't always a safety net. There isn't always a veteran lineup to stabilize the moment. Sometimes you're expected to be that stability even when you're still learning. That expectation changes how coaches manage you, how media talks about you, and how fans judge you. In the NBA, inconsistency is often framed as potential. In the WNBA, inconsistency is framed as concern. And that difference shapes how quickly confidence can turn into doubt. Not because the player is weaker, but because the environment allows less fluctuation. Another thing that rarely gets discussed is how few chances there are to quietly rebuild after a bad stretch. In a longer season with deeper rosters, a slump can fade into the background. In the WNBA, every game feels closer to the edge. Fewer games, fewer opportunities. Every performance matters more because there are fewer of them. And when each moment carries more weight, the pressure compounds. I started noticing how differently pace shows up. NBA rookies are often given time because teams invest in future value. WNBA rookies are often evaluated on immediate return. That doesn't mean teams don't believe in development. It means the structure demands impact faster. And when impact becomes the priority, learning becomes compressed. This is where the emotional toll quietly builds. You're constantly balancing growth and execution. You want to experiment, but you can't afford many experiments. You want to find your rhythm, but you're expected to already have it. And that tension creates a kind of mental fatigue that doesn't always show up in stats or headlines. People sometimes say pressure makes you better, and it can, but only if there's space to breathe inside it. When pressure arrives before foundation, it doesn't sharpen you, it tests how fast you can adapt without breaking. And in the WNBA, that test comes early. This is the part that made everything click for me. WNBA rookies aren't under more pressure because they're less capable. They're under more pressure because they're asked to be ready sooner. That early readiness comes at a price. When you're constantly asked to deliver before you've fully settled, you start managing more than just your game. You manage emotions, reactions, expectations. You learn how to stay composed even when you're unsure, how to sound confident even when you're still figuring things out. And doing that every day takes energy people rarely account for. I realized that confidence in the WNBA has to be built differently. In the NBA, confidence can grow through repetition without immediate consequence. In the WNBA, confidence often has to exist before repetition. You're expected to trust yourself instantly because hesitation doesn't get many chances. That means belief has to come first, even before results. But belief without space is fragile. You can feel confident and still feel pressure at the same time. You can play well and still feel like one mistake could shift the conversation. That constant awareness forces you to mature quickly, mentally and emotionally. Some players grow into it, some struggle. And that struggle doesn't mean they lack talent. It means the environment demands growth faster than comfort allows. I also noticed how pressure shapes identity. WNBA rookies often become the future before they've had the chance to be the present. That sounds positive, but it adds weight. When you're labeled as the future, you're not just playing for today, you're playing for expectations that haven't even arrived yet. Every performance feels like it's either confirming or disappointing something abstract. This is where comparison becomes dangerous. NBA rookies are often compared to each other. WNBA rookies are often compared to eras, to legends, to what the league needs. And that kind of comparison removes the human timeline. It skips the part where you're allowed to be inconsistent, uncertain, or unfinished. The hardest thing to explain is that none of this feels dramatic in the moment. It feels quiet, controlled, internal. You still show up, you still compete. But underneath, you're learning how to hold pressure without letting it harden you, without letting it steal the joy that brought you here in the first place. And that's when I understood something that changed how I approached everything. Pressure in the WNBA isn't just about performance. It's about who you become while you're being watched. As I started understanding this difference more clearly, I stopped comparing pressure by numbers, contracts, followers, or headlines. I started comparing it by support systems. In the NBA, rookies walk into an ecosystem designed to protect growth. Bigger rosters, longer seasons, more chances to recover from bad nights. The system expects fluctuation. It plans for it. In the WNBA, the system is tighter, leaner, more exposed. That means the player becomes the buffer. When something goes wrong, there's less space for it to disappear. When something goes right, expectations rise instantly. That swing is fast and it's constant. You learn quickly that consistency isn't just valued, it's required. I also realized how much league growth depends on young players in the WNBA. Rookies aren't just additions, they're often catalysts. Attendance, attention, conversation, all of it can hinge on a small group of new faces. That responsibility rarely lands on NBA rookies the same way. They're part of a larger machine. WNBA rookies often feel like they're helping power it. That creates a unique kind of pressure, the pressure of representation. You're not only playing for yourself or your team, you're playing for perception, for progress, for proof that the league deserves the spotlight it's finally receiving. And when you're aware of that, every moment feels heavier. Not because you're scared to fail, but because failure feels like it might slow something bigger than you. This is the part that changes how you see pressure entirely. It stops being personal. It becomes collective. And carrying collective expectation at a young stage in your career requires maturity that can't be rushed. You learn quickly how to compartmentalize, how to stay focused, how to hold belief even when the noise gets louder. By this stage, I stopped asking whether the pressure was fair. That question doesn't help you survive it. Instead, I started asking a different one. How do you grow inside pressure without letting it take over who you are? Because pressure isn't going anywhere. And waiting for it to disappear only makes it heavier. This is when I finally understood the truth. WNBA rookies aren't under more pressure because they're less prepared. They're under more pressure because the league needs them sooner. Looking back now, I don't see the pressure as something unfair. I see it as something revealing. It revealed how different the paths are, even when the goal looks the same. It revealed how quickly responsibility arrives in the WNBA and how little room there is to hide while you grow. And it revealed something else too, that pressure isn't just about performance, it's about timing. WNBA rookies are often expected to already be. That difference changes everything. It changes how you prepare, how you respond to mistakes, how you protect your confidence, and most importantly, how fast you're forced to mature. You learn quickly that talent alone isn't enough. You need emotional control, mental resilience, and a strong sense of self that doesn't depend on weekly opinions. I've come to respect this pressure for what it is, not a punishment, but a responsibility. The league is growing, the spotlight is brighter, and the expectations are higher because the stakes are higher. Carrying that weight early isn't easy, but it's shaping a generation of players who understand what it means to perform when everything matters. If you're watching this as a fan, the biggest thing I hope you take away is this. Development doesn't always look clean, growth isn't always linear, and pressure doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it means trust that a player is capable of more than people realize, and WNBA rookies aren't asking for excuses. They're asking for understanding. Because when you look past the comparisons and the debates, you'll see something important. These players aren't just learning how to play at the highest level, they're learning how to carry the future of the game while they're still finding their footing inside it. And that kind of pressure deserves respect. If you want more honest conversations about what really happens behind the scenes in professional basketball, the parts that don't always make headlines, stay here. Subscribe. This story doesn't end with one season.